JSE all-share gaining 0.4%.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Absolutely. Oh, you didn't know, I'm sure. Nedbank at the bottom of the top 40, down just over 3%. No surprise there, given the fact that it has been rallying on the back of a lot of speculation of an imminent deal.
So I don't know, we know, of course, that Old Mutual is their controlling shareholder, previously agreed to sell the bank to HSBC. HSBC had a leadership change, decided they didn't want them anymore. Meanwhile, back in the States, Old Mutual has been offloading its US life business to Harbinger. That's that fabulous guy whose wife's got a pet pig and he's a hedge fund manager.
And that is relevant because?
Well, it just goes to show that Old Mutual are prepared to sell the businesses they don't want in the group to almost anyone. As far as the Nedbank stake is concerned, I think they're happy that it's there. It's not doing too badly currently. And if anything, it'll continue to deliver a profit contribution. But it's probably a global player that they'd be talking to. Everybody's been saying Standard Chartered, but Standard Chartered continues on its merry way doing this, that and the other. Who knows?
Sasol at the top of the top 40, up just over 2%, 382 Rand a share. Massive volatility in the oil price, $123 a barrel coming up again. It's strengthening slightly. And what created the sell-off was the GS CCCP.
That crazy report from yesterday about how you should get out of all your commodities. Totally nonsense, and the fact that Libya supposedly settled and Syria is fine and Saudi is good and Bahrain is going to be peaceful for 50 years. Total nonsense, of course. The oil price doesn't surprise me to see it going higher, and I would imagine if anyone was getting out of those stocks, they're now regretting the fact and piling back in again. So Sasol was one of the big losers yesterday, gainers today.
Just going back to Nedbank, Citi Group, possible interest.
Well, of course, Citi Group would be the other that they would put on a list. We hear rumors every other day that JP Morgan is about to buy Investec, blah, 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 blah. Most of these things are dreamt up by investment bankers who are hoping that they'll get the contract to advise on the transaction. For every 10 rumors we hear, only 0 of them mean anything.
So for someone that's an optimist, you're awfully cynical today, I have to say. Let's move on to inflation. If we use...
and don't forget the joke of the day, right?
Yes, the Volcker...
Inflation.
The Volcker methodology, it is closer to 10%. We've got US inflation coming out on Friday, could hit around 2.7%. We're sitting with negative real interest rates in the US, in Europe, in India, in China. It's pushing up the likes of gold and a lot of those investment metals as well.
So inflation can be a problem, and that's where central banks have to move in and raise rates. So that's going to continue around the world. That's the way it all works. My issue about inflation is, are we going to see runaway inflation, Zimbabwe-style inflation, hyperinflation, Weimar Republic inflation? My answer is no. Not in civilized countries anyway. Perhaps at the margin, Venezuela's and the
countries that measure inflation in the way that it wouldn't...
That is a red herring, that story.
That would include fuel and food.
The point about how it used to be in like Volcker style, all they're saying is that over time the basket gets adjusted. It gets adjusted because people spend money differently now than they did 30 years ago. So inflation is what it is. And there will be issues, but I don't think it's something that's going to cause us major headaches.
Let me humour you. Your joke of the day, Paul.
Well, my joke of the day comes from Chris Hart. He says that prior to the BRIC meeting, that the Prime Minister of China and the Prime Minister of India are going to get together and have a meeting over a meal. And his joke of the day is that who is going to sing for his supper? I mean, isn't that just brilliant? Chris, that's a wonderful, wonderful, funny joke.
Thank you so much for your insights, Paul.